Okay, thank you so much to both Jessica and Amanda. We're so excited to be here today. And so if you see on the screen right now, you can see our agenda. First, it's not mentioned here, but we really think it's worth mentioning just from our hearts, some gratitude. Thank you so much for being here. As Amanda mentioned, people are coming from afternoon, evening, morning, and so you're taking time out of a significant part of your day to be with us, and we're just so grateful for that. So thank you so much. We're excited to go on this journey with you, both through this hour, but also in the future. And so if you see at the top, we have an approximate for how this session will run. We're looking at about a 45-minute session, and there's a completely optional Q&A 15 minutes at the end. So please feel free to come with questions. One thing I want to say as well is if your question requires a deeper dive, a one-on-one conversation, we absolutely welcome that. So please ask anything you want, and we'll answer it in the moment, or we'll answer it afterward as well, and we can connect. Some of the topics we'll cover today would be job search tips, resume, cover letter, and reference tips, LinkedIn profile tips, and really how to get your LinkedIn to grab and garner attention, setting salary expectations. And part of what we cover there is also researching and knowing what your resources are to ensure you have a salary that matches what you're looking for, interview preparation, and as I mentioned before, a Q&A. So we'll go into our first slide. And really, as we mentioned, Nicole and I are from Altus Recruitment. We're so excited to be here. And we thought we might start with just an overview of our services and the industries that we support. And you'll hear actually a little bit later in this slide, industries that we don't support. And that is absolutely nothing to worry about if you focus in those industries. We do have tips for you as well, and we can be a resource for you there as well. So here at Altus Recruitment, we specialize in temporary or contract and permanent staffing. We have a really geographically diverse team, which is so wonderful, and that's about 225 people at current state. We work with just under 3,000 clients across Canada. So really exciting in terms of breadth and reach of different industries and also different client contacts. Every year, we're so proud of this. We place 8,500 plus people, and these are high performing quality candidates in both private and in public sector. So we love putting people to work and we're really good at it. One of the largest staffing suppliers in the government of Canada, that's Altus Recruitment, and we're so proud to hold that title. We see these great initiatives working in the government, and we're so excited to be a part of them and really get to be on sort of the bottom floor of how Canada is going to transform and change. At the bottom, you're going to see here the sectors that we actually support. So that would be inclusive of IT, healthcare, science, education, retail and manufacturing, construction and property management, engineering, energy and utilities, finance and accounting, and nonprofit. So I alluded to this earlier, but a few examples you wouldn't have heard me say there would be hospitality or trades. And that's not an industry that we service, but that is not to say it's not an industry that other firms service. And we pride ourselves in having relationships and connections in the community of other firms. So if you want suggestions on where to go, where we know there's a heavy concentration of roles in those specializations or others you don't see here, we absolutely welcome the question and we can help direct you to those as well so you find that right fit for you. And really, this whole conversation is going to be about that. What's the right fit for you, and how do you enter the job market in a way you're comfortable with? So, one of the biggest things of that, and we sort of talked about this at the beginning, is remote work. People are calling into this presentation from all different places across the globe, and that's so wonderful. As a military family member, it could be that at times you've had to put your career on either the back burner or on hold and sacrifice where your passion is professionally to support your spouse or your family member. First of all, that's a beautiful initiative, and we really want to highlight that because this is an amazing thing you're doing, and we thank you for that. What this means in remote work is that you can continue to support your family and be there with them when they're deployed or when they're in relocation. But you do not have to, if you don't want to, sacrifice that career necessarily. Position yourself back as a job seeker. You can still maintain the flexibility to be there for your family. And we're part of the piece of helping you there. And also, you are a huge part of that. So we want to really highlight, and this is such good news. Present day, in our database alone, over 20% of the roles we have active are available for fully remote workers, meaning you can do them from anywhere in Canada. We'll address this in a few slides in the future, but what we really want to highlight here is we can be a tool, a resource for you to decide what that flexibility means for you, what remote work has to look like in order to work for you and your family. It's not a one size fits all, and that's absolutely okay. We're going to get into job search tips. And one thing I want to highlight here is a job search can be daunting. And so if you feel that, if there's any apprehension, we almost welcome it, lean into it. Let's name what that apprehension is and we can sort it out together. I've heard many times it's a full-time job to look for a job. And I would echo that's often true. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. Some of the tips we're going to give you will help expedite that process. Some will become tools in a toolkit that you utilize yourself. And some are about how we, a firm, could be an intermediary between you and that job search and really help connect you to special and meaningful work to you. So if I go to this slide here, what we really wanted to highlight first is the job search resources that are available to you. What this list is comprised of is what our clients are telling us, as well as habits and behaviors that we see online of where candidates are and where clients go. So the top platforms we see are LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Monster, JobBank, and Glassdoor. And some of the points I wanted to highlight in this is these are platforms that many of us firms have to pay for to have access to the databases. We often have to pay a fee and not a small fee in order to be able to go and mine great talent like yourselves. And why I highlight that is the gift of these platforms is you, is your resumes and your profile and the employers who are looking for these job seekers. So when I highlight these, if you see some that your resume is on, that your profile is up to date on, but there are others that you don't, I would really suggest go and have an up-to-date, current, and detailed resume, and I'll get into why the detail matters a little later, on all of these platforms. Really have your resume out there because while you're applying, that is absolutely a way that you could secure a job. The other way is we will find you or another employer will find you through resume searches in these databases. So have your resume out there. There is absolutely no downside to you. We see the same names in different databases all the time, and that's absolutely okay. In fact, it's usually a marker of a very strong job seeker.
Sarah, one other thing, I'll jump in quickly.
Yes,
Part of the
please.
reason why we highlighted these 6 in particular is because they are all free to the job seeker. There are paid parts, and we will get into this later for LinkedIn, but ultimately the basic profiles on all of these sites are free to you as a job seeker. So I think that that's so important to reiterate as well.
Yes, thank you so much for adding that. It's a great point.
Of course.
So you may be asking yourself, why should I be working with a staffing firm? And I'll tell you right away, it's a great question. And I often actually ask people to look into that and see, is this the way I want to go? As I said, one size doesn't fit all. So if you see the 4 points on the right, I'll just go through them. And so first, as I kind of alluded to before, a staffing firm will act as a middleman between employer and the worker, and they help match qualified candidates to companies that have current job openings. On top of that, every day, our internal teams are tasked with meeting clients, with understanding what their businesses are trying to achieve, understanding their milestones and their pain points. So we can take an application from a submission through a portal to an explanation on how this specific person that we've taken time to get to know very well can solve those pain points. We have the ability to advocate for you, oftentimes in such a way that you may not be able to advocate for yourself because there's a system or a tool or a platform in between you and the hirer. So we as a staffing firm are able to make those connections and cultivate relationships with our clients so we really do know what they're looking for and we also have the ability to show them how you are a great match to that personally and specifically. The second one's a bit of a misconception in the industry. So if you have any hesitation with working with a staffing firm because you believe there's a fee to you, there's absolutely no fee. And the misconception sometimes is that in order for a staffing firm to be compensated, it comes from the candidate's pay. And that is absolutely not true. And to give you a small example, usually what will be happening is the client will say to us, we're looking for a person with X, Y, and Z skill set, and this is around the market rate for that person, or we will inform them of what the market rate is. And then there is a fee associated to the client for the work we do. So you will never have to pay, you should never pay. A staffing firm works for a client to match great talent to their jobs. Where we really love to see and to interact with candidates is entering them into our database, getting to know them personally so we can make those matches. So again, no fee to you at all. Let the client pay and let us find you a job and work together. This is a tip as well, and a benefit of working with a staffing firm is once you apply, keep applying. Check our databases, check the platforms we mentioned. Apply so that your name starts to come up more and more in our searches. As many times as you're applying, it is showing us that you're an active job seeker. And as we do our searches on keywords and skill sets, you'll come up more and more. We'll also have the ability to present you on roles that may not be on any other websites because they're exclusive to us. So if you join a staffing firm, and again, this is many staffing firms, and I think that we're unique, of course, in some of our offerings, but this is something that you can use to your advantage and really get your name out there and perhaps minimize the time that you're spending. So back to that full-time job to find a job, this will help alleviate some of that stress.
Sarah, the other thing I'll jump in and say here
Yeah.
is that I think the other common misconception with staffing firms is that once you've applied and you've had that initial meeting with a recruiter, that it's up to them to find the work for you, that they're kind of
Yes.
doing it for you, which is true. Like you just said, we are doing searches and your name could come up in those searches. However, the more active you are with applying for jobs, you're enhancing your chances of coming up in those searches. So I do always try to reiterate that it is a dual relationship where we are searching
Yes.
for you, but that also you are actively searching for yourself.
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning that. And so it's actually such a great segue into this last one here, because that's exactly it. It's not that we can guarantee employment, but we are actively aware of the jobs that are open, and we look to partner with someone who's actively searching. And so that's that dual relationship. And it really works well. But of course, yes, we really look to you to support that job search as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about resume, cover letter, and references. So if we think first, we have here 5 key elements of the resume, and we actually added that 5th one relatively recently. So we have your headline, think a one sentence that really pops that says who you are and what your interest lies in. A summary is now a bit more robust, a few sentences, a small paragraph that's really explaining sort of what you've done, what you've focused on, where you look to go in the future, and really summarize in a few more sentences than your headline about the who are you, what do, what are you interested in. Your area of expertise will be the industries you've worked in or the skill set that you specialize in, and the places that you have either focused on or are educated on or want to focus on in the future. We can summarize that in the areas of expertise and also future interests. Experience would likely be where a mind goes when they think of a resume. We have examples of 2 ways of doing it, but when you have your job listed, when you worked there, and your duties. And I want to stop here on that experience piece. When we talked about searches and we talked about you coming up in our searches or other firm searches, that's where in the experience, it's really important to be detailed, to have keywords that speak to what you do, to have robust explanations of, I solved this problem by doing X, or I focused on this, it took this long, etc. And the reason being is most firms, when they're looking to match a candidate to a job, they are using keyword or Boolean searches to match different resumes to the skill set they're looking for. So make sure your resume is robust. I always say the more information, the better, because at a staffing firm, we can also format and have it in a client preferred version once we go to submission stage. The last one, gaps explained. And I almost think gaps might be a misnomer. If you have taken off time to go with your spouse or your family member on deployment, or if you've taken time to raise a family, or if you haven't entered the job market yet, you still are in possession of a multitude of noteworthy skills. And I really want to highlight that because in a deployment, for instance, I'll reference my own mother. I asked her about this. She grew up in a military family. I said, when you were deployed, what skills did you have to hone in or lean on in order to make sure that was a successful deployment for you? She talked to me about project management. She talked to me about coordinating the move. She talked to me about having to have that tenacity to start a conversation and create relationships because she was consistently building new relationships in every town she went to. Some of those examples may resonate with you, some may not, and you have other ones popping up. Give yourself the credit and really highlight that. I was stationed here with my spouse or my family member, and these are the things I focused on, and this is the value I brought. These things are absolutely attributable to job roles you might be interested in. And so we really want to highlight that. If you left a space between, let's say, your last working a deployment, and your next working engagement, then you almost leave it for the reviewer to explain that gap or to say, oh, they must have taken a break. But I would posit that you did not. You were working on something very valuable. And so put it in there, answer the question for them, and leave nothing to the imagination. We talked about the uniqueness of the job search, and we'll just highlight that. Resumes are not one size fit all. There are suggestions online. There are client preferred formats. Make sure your resume speaks genuinely and highlights what you want people to know about you and your experience, but know that it will be personalized and it will have elements that are very unique to you. That's absolutely okay. In a job market, especially a competitive one, it's really wonderful to stand out. It's really wonderful to explain how you are unique compared to somebody else that they could hire. So really use that time and be proud of yourself. Okay, so now that you have your resume, and let's say you're working with a generic resume that you put together that does have this fulsome view of your experience. Well, now you're going to tailor it to a job posting. When you're working with a firm, that's part of our job as well, is to get it in that client-specific format and to have it speak to the job at hand. And so if you're applying on your own, these tips will still be very relevant. So first of all, determine what type of resume fits the need best. I mentioned that earlier that we were going to talk about two. There's a chronological resume and a functional resume. So functional resume focuses on your professional skills versus your work experience. Chronological will be, I think, the much more traditional or the one that pops in mind where it focuses on your work experience in a date order. You have to decide when you look at that role or how they describe what they want to see, which one would really suit that purpose, and be ready to pivot. Be ready to have that general one and then make it match the role you're applying to. The other part is review the job posting and determine the required education and experience. And why we highlight that is if you have a lot of similarities to what they're looking for at an experiential level, then what you might want to do is move those bullet points up to the top of the resume. As much as we like to think that a job employer would read every single line, there are actually some really cool stats on how fast someone scans a resume before they decide to move it to interview, etc. I've read stats that say some people do it in 6 seconds. I would hope they want to more, but we really get to push and have a tailored resume that bullet point 1, 2, 3 strikes them, gets their interest, gets them engaged, convinces them to keep reading. So the more relevant experience you have at the top, sometimes we bold, sometimes we underline if we really need to grab that attention, depending on the relationship with the client, really focus on that and highlight your experience and how it relates to this job specifically. Review your own experience and update the word in your resume to reflect the posting. And so I want to be clear here, again, genuine experience that you're very proud of producing. We're not asking you to add something that is not there. But if you see, for example, organization skills, attention to detail, some people will say, okay, that's a soft skill. Maybe we'll talk about an interview. I don't need to highlight it. But really think about your own experience and put, I have accelerated my organizational skills by working on X or by doing this with my family, coordinating my move. Really personalize it to the job description. So as that employer is reading through it, they see exactly why you'd be a natural fit to this role. Remember to save each version, only because you don't have to redo this every time. There'll be similarities and you'll just make it a bit more unique perhaps every time, but save each version. We can almost guarantee it will become handy later. We really want to highlight here, if you're sitting right now and saying, okay, you're telling me to create a resume, but I don't have one, you do not have to start from scratch. If anyone's staring at a blank Word document, you do not have to start from scratch. There are free resume tools you can go to. There's MS Office resume templates, there's Google Docs that have templates, and there's Canva, which this presentation is in, and it is very user-friendly. So these are all resources you can take advantage of to help guide you in taking care of putting that resume together. Again, if you partner with a firm, you can also work with us on that. We'll meet you, we'll qualify your profile, and we'll flush some of those items we were just talking through out and get them in a format. We'll send it to you for review, make sure it matches your experience correctly, and get your approval, of course, and then that document is yours to use as well if you want to in the future. Cover letter and do I need one? It's funny, that question comes up more and more as the years go by. And so the answer really is the same as your resume is unique, client requirements are often unique. And so some companies may ask for one. And so what we say is have one prepared. And again, I would file this under how to expedite your job search. Is if you have one prepared, thought through, and handy that you can augment to match the role specifically, then it is a much faster plug and play, so to speak, to get your application in. Use the cover letter when it's asked for as an opportunity to explain your experience and why you're interested in the position. And that last part I'm going to underscore. That's what really gets an employer excited. Is yes, you want the job and that's awesome. Why do you want the job in relation to working with this company? What excites you? What gets your passion up in this company? Explain that to them. Sometimes we think that simply applying shows that we're passionate, but actually speaking the passion is so important. Nicole, I saw you go off
There-
mute. Did you want to say something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say this is also another fantastic opportunity to explain some of those gaps. Like if you are trying to tell a bit of a story about, being on deployment or being taking a break to raise a family, this is another opportunity to inject a little bit more of your own personal story. A cover letter can help you do that. So if you
Yeah.
feel like it doesn't feel right to put that into your resume, which not everyone may want to do, that's fine. This would be another good opportunity, as well as LinkedIn, which we'll get into in a minute. But this is a good opportunity again to kind of explain more of your personal story.
Yes. Thank you for adding that. It's a great addition. We have a sample or a suggestion of how you could structure that as well. And so we see it as an introduction, which is 1 to 2 sentences and about yourself, etc. And then another 1 to 2 sentences in addition of why you're interested in the role and the company, as we just sort of went through. And really think genuinely about that. And why I pause there is you deserve to love where you work. And so you are interviewing an employer just as much as they are interviewing you. You're about to give them a significant portion of your day, your time, and your attention. So make sure that that passion is there. And if it's not, keep searching or let us help you search for what really gets you passionate. And then the last part of that cover letter would be 3 to 4 sentences of explaining your experience in a work regard, but also, as Nicole mentioned, your experience, your fulsome experience of life and attention and how it relates to this job. And again, we can always help with that. Wrap up by thanking the manager for their time. And really, this is a part of just showing gratitude. And we're big believers that you put that out and it comes back to you. So thank them for their time, for their review and attention to your cover letter. And we often see that we get calls back on that. References. So one big part of references is selecting the professional reference. And so think about who to pick. Think about the person, even in terms of their ability to answer this call, their ability to take the time and meaningfully provide information about you. Pick somebody who's an advocate for you, who you have impressed and who's in your corner. Set them up for success by telling them specifically what you're applying for, where, why you're passionate, and the key items that you think you can really do to add value to that organization. Your reference is a great place to speak for you and advocate for you. And when you can't ask for a reference from a current employer, for instance, or perhaps you haven't been in the working environment yet and you don't have one, there are different things you can do. If you can't ask your direct manager at your current employer, perhaps there's a peer or another manager level who is in a position to review your work. You got to think about the reference and what they're speaking to. Will they be able to meaningfully comment on how you show up as a worker, on the value you bring to the team, the passion, the culture perspective? So, really have someone who can speak to that for you. And if you haven't been in the work environment before, think about a character reference. Think about an educational reference. And again, someone who can speak to your attention and the passion and the focus that you put on work that's assigned to you, whatever that work may be. I'm going to throw it over to Nicole to talk us through LinkedIn and your digital resume.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. So, LinkedIn is a topic I am very passionate about because it is such an excellent resource for job seekers. So, if you're ever thinking, okay, do I really need a LinkedIn profile? I just want to highlight that statistics show that 93% of recruiters are using LinkedIn to research and recruit candidates. And as Sarah touched on before when she was talking about the different job search platforms, it doesn't hurt. Get your name out there on as many different platforms as possible because, if anything, you're just increasing your exposure. So think of LinkedIn as your digital resume. And there are so many ways that it can help a job seeker through the tools that are available to you. So that includes searching for work. And what's great about LinkedIn when you're setting up your search is that you can set up job alerts. They have really excellent filters that you can include as well. So, for example, if you are looking for remote work, that's a filter you can include. Um, And then you can also save the jobs that you've applied to. So if you want to be able to have a quick reference to go back and follow up on some of those jobs, it is an option that they have available to you as well. LinkedIn also makes it very easy to apply for jobs because in a lot of cases, you can apply directly on the platform, meaning that you can upload your resume, so your actual physical copy of your resume, in addition to the fact that the person considering you for the role would be able to click on your profile. So you can easily apply or upload, your resume and apply for the job. Sometimes you will be pushed to, depending on the employer that is advertising the role, you might be pushed to their website to apply. But in that circumstance, I mean, that's the employer's choice. So LinkedIn does try to simplify that process for the job seeker when possible. Like I said, you are increasing your exposure. You're able to be found by employers. So what you want to do is ensure, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail in a slide or two, but you need to make sure, when I was saying upload your resume, that your resume matches your LinkedIn profile. It really is something that recruiters will look for to ensure that your job titles and your dates do match up. So keep that in mind when you're thinking of your exposure to potential employers. You also have the opportunity to explore company profiles. So let's say you are reconsidering the role that you're in or getting back into the workforce and you're not sure of the type of company that you would want to look for. LinkedIn's a great place to start because you can do that research on employers. You can go to their company pages. You can see what type of news they've been posting about. You can see articles that they may have put up. You can see the size of the company. You can see the people who work there who are on LinkedIn. It won't be a full picture of every employee, but those who do have LinkedIn profiles, you can actually click through and connect with those individuals. And then similar to that, you can build your online community. So there are also, in addition to company profiles, there are groups that you can join, whether it be based on personal interests or professional development. There are so many groups that you can join to have discussions, to give you an opportunity to bounce some ideas off of people, crowdsource, ask for advice, network with people. It's a really great tool to look for some of those. It would obviously be very dependent on the type of work that you're looking for or what your personal interest may be, but I would highly recommend looking for support groups on LinkedIn as well. It is a great opportunity to network. So think of this as your online community. And I read a stat actually in July. So the number of users on LinkedIn worldwide is 846 million as of July of this year. 20 million of those are within Canada. So if you think about that, that is such a vast network of potential connections that you could relate to. So whether you're located, for myself, for example, I'm in Ottawa, I could be relating to people in BC, in Alberta, in the Northwest Territories who are in a similar profession as me and be able to connect and crowdsource or potentially network if I am looking for remote work. So a great resource in that aspect as well. There's also an excellent opportunity to explore professional development opportunities via LinkedIn Learning. So some courses on LinkedIn Learning are actually available for free. And actually, we could include this as a potential follow-up resource. There are some excellent job search resources that are free. LinkedIn Learning does also have a pay option as well. But I would encourage you, if you're interested, if you're scanning some of the topics, they do offer a 30-day free trial. So it's something that you could look into and can complete as many courses as you can in the 30 days that are free to expand your knowledge. So on that note, I do want to talk about LinkedIn in terms of being a free resource. So LinkedIn, to a job seeker, the basic profile is free. I know that we often get questions of, should I upgrade to a LinkedIn premium account? And to be honest, is it worth the cost? I mean, that's your own call. It's $30 a month to upgrade. What it would give you access to are in-mail credits. So when you're connecting with somebody, for example, there is an opportunity to include a short message, but if you want to be able to in-mail them, there are often costs associated with that. So a LinkedIn premium account would allow you to send an email, which just gives you more characters. You can expand your message a little bit more. And it also allows you to see if you do have a LinkedIn profile, you may have noticed in your notifications, it'll say, oh, you've come up in X number of searches in the last 10 days. And then you can click and view who's looked at your profile. In a basic account, you can see that history for 30 days. In a LinkedIn premium account, it'll go back 90 days. So it'll just allow you, again, sometimes that will help you decide who you want to connect with. Because if there is a person in a role who could be hiring for a position that you would be interested in at a company who has looked at your profile and you're not connected, it's a great opportunity for you to build that connection because maybe they're considering you for a position. Okay, so now let's dive into your profile. Let's talk about that. And I'm going to start with the profile picture. And our top tips when it comes to a LinkedIn profile picture is to ensure that you're using a professional photo. So that doesn't mean that you have to pay to have professional headshots taken or pay a professional photographer to come take photos of you. You can have a family member or a friend take a photo for you. The key is that you want to present yourself professionally. So you would want to dress in the way that you would dress for work. You would want to make sure that the setting around you is a professional setting. I would advise you to avoid taking selfies. I know some people have really mastered the skill, so kudos to you if you have, but oftentimes when you're taking a selfie, you can see your arm in it. So it is a bit obvious that it's a selfie. Um, I would also avoid photos of you in a group and or social setting. So try to think of it again, it's really meant to be you. It's simple. It's your face. It's how you want to present yourself. You don't want to have a group of friends where the person's like, oh, which person is it in this photo? And if it's a social setting, that could often mean that there would be drinks or other things involved. So again, just keeping it simple. The other thing I would recommend when it comes to your profile picture is to add, if you are openly looking for work, to add the filter open to work. And you can do that when you're in your LinkedIn profile editing your photo. There's an option to add a frame, and one of the frames is open to work. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's great for people to see if they are looking at your profile, but recruiters, and Sarah, you could probably speak to this, it's actually one of the search filters that we can include when we're conducting searches on LinkedIn. So it is something that recruiters do rely on to say, do they have the open to work? Because it just makes that conversation a little bit easier when we are reaching out to job seekers to know that you are open to considering a new role. So then we'll move on to your headline. So the key with headlines is to keep it short and to the point. So Sarah, I'll just get you to pop over one screen. So this is ultimately what would draw someone to potentially want to connect with you or look at your profile. So when you're conducting a search on the back end, I'll give you kind of some insider scoop of what it looks like from our end. When you are conducting a search, you often just see, well, you do just see the profile picture, the name, and then what that person's headline is. So think of this as like your first grab of attention when somebody is conducting a search. So in that, you might want to feature your job title or a unique skill or specialization. If you want to get really creative, we have seen some job seekers include questions. So for example, are you looking for your next XYZ? Which is kind of interesting, a different way to get them to want to be like, oh, yes, I am looking for a director of communications and engagement. I'm going to click on Nicole's profile. Um, or it could just be a unique statement about yourself. And if you're struggling with what to say in that headline, because maybe you're not feeling creative, one tip that we have given job seekers is to ask 2 or 3 other people, how would you describe me in 4 to 5 words? And then use that as inspiration when you're building your headline. So moving on to your about section, the about section is where I find you can have the most amount of creativity. This is where you can tell your story. And it kind of goes back to relating a little bit to that cover letter opportunity. So I would give a lot of the same tips as we would give with the cover letter. However, think of this as a lot more casual. It's not as structured or as formal as a resume or a cover letter. It's your opportunity to tell a story. Like I actually start my about section talking about how I used to get in trouble in school for talking too much. Well, I'm in communications. Clearly, I love to talk. So it's just funny. I use it as an opportunity to tell a story. So people take different approaches. But I do find that this is your opportunity to talk about your work experience, to talk about groups, clubs, or organizations you've partnered with, volunteer work you've done, if you have done some part-time work, contract work, projects you've worked on. Again, your opportunity to speak to being a military family member and how that has impacted you both personally and professionally. It's a great opportunity to talk about those gaps in the resume. Again, if you have taken time away to raise a family, to move, anything of that nature, or even just to pause and reflect on your career, that's fine too. This is your opportunity to speak to that. Then you have your experience and your skills section. And basically, this is what I was saying earlier. This is what should match your resume. So recruiters will look for this. They want to make sure that there's consistencies between the dates and job titles that you've held for previous positions. So keep that in mind when you are filling that in on LinkedIn. When you're looking at, LinkedIn will give you the opportunity to just list your job title and the dates that you've worked. I would recommend use it as you would a resume. So include the specific tasks and responsibilities you held in that position. Talk about major projects or events that you worked on in that role, who you worked with. Did you manage team members? Did you have any significant accomplishments in that position? Did you receive any specific recognition or awards? I would include all of that for each of your positions. And then when you're describing the skills, include anything that may come up, like try to think of it kind of strategically. What would come up in a keyword search? So when we as recruiters are looking for a job seeker, it's interesting to think of, okay, I'm interested in, I'll go back to myself always, director of communications and engagement. You might want to research some job descriptions in those positions and use some of those keywords, tying it to your experience so that you know that if that is a requirement of the job, well, I do have experience in that. So I'm going to list that in my description of my positions that I've held in the past. So that's it. Sarah, do you have anything to add from a recruitment perspective? Because I know that you do this a lot more hands-on than I do.
Yeah, I would go back to sort of what we were alluding to before, or actually stating, I should say, before, but it is that it's thinking of, I would almost say, into the minutia of the duties that you performed. And I
Mhm,
would really put them all in there, maybe stack rank them in terms of how well their relevance to the job itself. And then also, if you find anything's redundant, you can consolidate those messages, etc.
mhm,
But really know that explaining the work is very, very valuable. And so short, like a couple sentences with not a lot of detail might not come up in those searches, but might not
mhm,
also highlight how you got that experience and what you did. And the last
mhm,
thing I would say is really talk about things that you accomplished as a team and
mhm,
things that you owned and took to completion by yourself. Because
mhm,
both are very valuable, but it's nice to see that distinction to say, I did, and the specifics, worked on X for this many years to deliver X, and
mhm.
we can help with some of those tips, but being very specific so that people can put together when they're reviewing your resume exactly what you owned and were responsible for.
It's so true. And another thing I'll add to that too is progression within a company. I'm a good example of that. I've been with our firm for 13 years, but I've held 4 job titles. So it's also remembering to differentiate your job titles within your own history at a company and see how that expansion and growth has happened for you within a company as well. So thank you for adding those, Sarah. The last point I'll touch on is when it comes to growing your network. So I know I said this earlier, but LinkedIn really is a virtual employment community. So when you're thinking of who you want to have in your network, be mindful of that. What does that online community look like for you? What areas do you want to build and network in? There are some key people that I would recommend that you connect with, and that would be, previous colleagues, business partners, or vendors that you have worked with. Other professionals in similar roles. I do this a lot because I often will garner inspiration based on posts from people who hold similar positions to me, articles that they might share. So I will actually go into my network and search my second degree connections based on job title and add people who are in similar positions as me, because I do find that it's a great opportunity. I actually connected with somebody who attended one of our webinars at Altus, and now him and I go back and forth almost 2 or 3 times a week on ideas around employee engagement, which is so interesting. It's just this new way of being able to kind of come up with ideas and not always having to, think of them yourselves, rely on that network. So that's a good tip. And then leaders you admire would be another one. So if there are, and I don't just mean leaders in your own professional development, they could be public facing leaders who you are really passionate about, or I don't want to say celebrities, but you know what I mean? Like certain people who are influencers, not in the way that you're probably thinking, professional influencers to you, as well as recruitment and hiring managers. So one thing that we do often hear in terms of a question from candidates is it appropriate to connect with the person who I know is hiring for the position that I have just applied for? Well, don't be shy. Yes, do it. I think that it's a great opportunity, again, to put yourself, creating that visibility opportunity, put yourself in front of the job. So saying, I've recently seen that you were hiring for this, because when you do create that connection, there's an opportunity to include a short note. You don't have to reference that you applied for a job. You can, but I would definitely reinforce remaining connected, because even if you aren't selected for that role, maybe you're one of their top contenders. So the next time a position becomes available, they'll think of you because you're still a part of their network. Um, and the only other point I wanted to make here, so when it comes to building your network, sorry, Sarah, I know I sounded like I was done there, but I thought of one other thing. I think on average, you are able, it kind of fluctuates, but in terms of the number of people you can add to your network on a daily basis, it's approximately 30. That number does fluctuate based on the number of acceptances and rejections or non-answers that you get to um, your connection request. LinkedIn does that to be, I guess, mindful of their own network, so that if you are going and adding, let's say, 200 people a day and nobody was expecting, well, are you doing this for the proper reason? So there is, I don't know the algorithm, I'm not a LinkedIn insider, but I can tell you that on average, you'd be allowed to add about 30 people to your network each day. Okay, so now I am mindful of time. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, but salary expectations. So when it comes to salary expectations, it's so important to think of two facts. So what are your goals and what is realistic in terms of the current labor market? So our top tip here is to do your research. There is no harm in not knowing what is, I guess, reasonable when you are thinking of, it's a number one, I think, question that job seekers shy away from when you are asked what are your goals in terms of salary? So I would recommend being educated to answer that question. And some of the resources, we do have some that we commonly refer job seekers to. So I'm just going to quickly run through those. LinkedIn Salary is a great resource. They provide information on salaries based on job title, geographical location, industry, level of education, and years of experience. They also offer insights on additional benefits, so bonuses, stock options, perks, and company benefits in general. There's also Indeed. Indeed has a salary guide as well. So very similar to LinkedIn, but they also allow you to browse top paying jobs per industry. So they kind of go a little bit deeper in terms of the industries you may be interested in. Glassdoor actually offers 3 separate tools when it comes to salary. So they have a Discover Salary tool, which will show you the average salary for roles based on job titles and geographical location. But they also have a salary calculator. So that helps you see if you're in a current position, you're like, am I being paid fairly? It will actually allow you to enter your information and show you if you're being paid below, at, or above the average market value for a position in that similar area. They do the same for job offers. So the third tool that they offer is an analyze job offer tool. So same thing, you would enter in the information and the calculator will tell you if the offer being made to you is below, at, or above the market value for that position. PayScale is another one. What's interesting about PayScale, actually, I always love to mention this, is that they collect the data from both sides of things, so from both the employees and the employers, which not all sites do. They often offer a one-sided approach to that. So I find that that's kind of interesting for salary negotiation. They do offer great tips actually on salary negotiation, so resources that are available to you. And then the final one is Job Bank. And I think we had that on our slide earlier, Sarah. I know we didn't touch too much on it, but Job Bank is a free government of Canada service, and you can apply for jobs there, but also they do offer trend analysis tools with high level overview of the Canadian labor market when it comes to salary. So another great resource when considering salaries. The final point is what Sarah's just pulled up here for us. In addition to just your base salary, I think it's so important to consider and understand the total package being offered. So more than just what are you being paid in an annual year, there's so much more that employers are offering. And especially I find in this post-pandemic world that we live in terms of offering remote work, in terms of offering having equipment at home. You can see a bunch of them listed here. There are monetary and non-monetary benefits that an employer can offer. It could be travel awards, offering you a phone and paying for those bills, having home equipment, access to training, professional development, education. It's more than just salary to consider there. And I think that would be the final thing that you would want to look at when considering a job offer. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, and it's funny, you hit it earlier, and when talking about your salary, and again, a staffing firm can help you with this because we will advocate you, and actually we can have the majority of those conversations. We often say to the client, don't have the conversation of salary with the candidate directly, come through us. The reason is we know the market. We can challenge the client. We can challenge the client on, okay, they might accept this salary. It's within their range, but I know they have 2 other offers. I know they're a highly sought after candidate. I know that what they are asking is actually not representative of the market rate for their skill set. And so their range is such, I agree. I would suggest you pay them X more in order to secure the candidate long term. So we can rely on a staffing firm, but also if you're not going that route, rely on yourself to advocate for you. Talking about money in a professional environment, adult to adult, is absolutely within your right. And so make sure you're comfortable because you're looking for a long-term relationship when it comes to salary. It's a perm role. So why accept something that you might not be happy with in a very short time? Advocate for yourself and target the rate that you want. Thank you so
Excellent
much,
advice.
Nicole. I'll just take it here. And again, I will reference time. I don't want to keep you guys too late. So we'll go a little bit quickly over this section. If you want more support in this area, please feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you with myself or anyone in my team. If we're representing you on roles, this will be part of our process interview prep. But if we're not, I really love communicating with the community about securing roles. So please feel free to reach out and we can talk it over. When I look through interview tips, what I really want to say is how to prepare. So first, is it a phone interview or is it a virtual interview? Research the company that you are interviewing for. That is an absolute way to stand out. To say, oh, I see you're working on this, or I see in the last 3 years you acquired this. It shows a genuine interest in their company specifically, which is one of those intangible things you can't write on a resume, but that can really come out in an interview. Check the LinkedIn of the hiring manager if it's possible, if they have one. See if there's any similarities, and not just in professional setting. Did you go to the same schools? Did you grow up in the same town? Do they have interests? Are they following celebrities, influencers in a professional context who are interesting to you as well? Maybe that's a talking point. It's a time to connect as a human to a human and to be genuine and to be yourself. If you're working with a firm, ask your recruitment consultant, who would be one of us, to help you prepare. And by the way, you won't have to ask us, we will meet with you. It's very fun. And part of the preparation is disarming you, making sure you don't show up nervous or with a context of wanting to impress. We're going to make you show up prepared, which will be impressive. And so that your genuine, authentic self can really come out. Make sure you have a job description. You know what the context of the role you're applying for is. And this one's so interesting. Be mindful of your surroundings. And we don't mean that only in the way you might think, which is like, okay, make sure there's no, this or that around. For me in prep for this presentation, we have glass offices. And my computer was switched and stuff away that you could almost see into another office. That would have changed how I showed up. Every time I saw someone heading into that office, I would have thought, can you see them? Is it going to mess up our attention, our focus? So I moved my computer. And that way I have absolutely nothing else in my head except you and our presentation. And so do that. Clear your environment of any potential distractions for yourself and make sure you get to be yourself and show up and not thinking, okay, I hope that corner doesn't show up, etc. So really just set yourself up to where you're in a calm state. Before this presentation, I listened to music. It just gets my head in a place that makes me feel good. And so I'm here and ready to have fun. Get yourself in that place too. Follow-up is always interesting in interviews. And so we have some best practices. We say do send a thank you to every person who was present at the interview. It's a way to stand out and a way to showcase that you are thoughtful of their time and the attention they put for you. And so you send that thank you. Check online examples if you want of great follow-up emails that you can do. And of course, personalize it. Ensure that you follow up within that 24-hour time frame. And again, it's kind of a way to show the flex muscle of I'm expedient, I have a good follow through, and really show some of those things you probably talked about in your interview. If you don't hear back, I always hear this question, is it appropriate to follow up? Absolutely. In about a week's time, 5 to 7 days, you absolutely can follow up because you put your time into it too. And of course, in the right tone, but it's you're genuinely interested in the job and the job process. Notify your references if it's going to that stage that they should be available for a call and to please expect it. Maybe even tell them who will be calling in terms of either the company or the person's name so that not only they answer, but they respond to the request very fast and they give that time and attention and focus that your reference for you really deserves to give you. Stay in touch. Nicole mentioned this earlier. Even if you don't get the job, everything is about connections. And you could not have gotten that job for something that had nothing to do with you. It could have been there was another candidate who worked there before, and so the ramp time was going to be faster, but they really wanted to onboard you too. Staying in contact keeps you top of mind if more jobs come up and they say, great, now we can get that real talent in. Stay positive, both in your tone and in general. And like I said, it could be daunting and we understand that, but know that this is a process and it's actually as personal as it feels. Sometimes it's semantics. Sometimes the top 20 resumes got reviewed and they closed the portal and you applied and the job's employer didn't see it. And so just know that you can stay positive. We will be on this journey with you if you so choose to partner with us. But if you're on the journey on your own, just know that you will get there. It just does take work and tenacity and follow up. If you don't get the job, don't hesitate to ask about any feedback. It's absolutely within your right. You provided that time to them and gave them that focus. And if there's anything you can take away to have a better interview next time, or even possibly just a refined, not even better interview, why not get that feedback? So don't hesitate at all to follow up. So I'd love to pass it to our partner in this presentation, Augustina. She's going to walk you through this last slide here before we open it to Q&A. So Augustina, over to you.
Thank you very much, ladies. This was amazing. So much pertinent information and helpful information. I am sure everybody's excited about what they've received so far. Just give me a second while I pull up the MSEN to everyone on here. I am not sure if you are logged in and registered to the Military Spousal Employment Network. If not, this is going to be quick because we do want to leave time to hear from you. And the great folks at Altis would love to answer all of your amazing questions. So what is the MSEN? It's another tool in your career development mailbox on your employment search to add to everything Sarah and Nicole have shared. And consequently, Altis is an employer partner on here. We currently have 19 employer partners on here, all available to you to connect with, just like Sarah and Nicole, for any questions you have about them. One of the most important things about our employer partner is that every single one of them has what you call a military spouse contact. And this is your go-to person within that organization to ask all the questions Sarah and Nicole just asked about. So please take full advantage of the network. It doesn't matter what your job title is or what industry you're looking. As you could see from the organizations on here, we have a range of industries represented. Sarah and Nicole, same thing within Altis. They represent a range of organizations that you have. Whether you're at entry level or senior level, they will be able to work with you and place you within those organizations. We also have career development tools and resources, a lot of what Sarah and Nicole just talked about, as you noticed, unlocking the power of LinkedIn, so a lot of the same topics that they talked about, you have it right here. Again, you get to do it in the convenience of your couch while relaxing and you're in that right frame of mind. It takes about 2 minutes to sign up for the network. You have the option to upload your resume when you do it or do it later. One of the most important things about this network, yes, it is a tool for you, but every employer partner uses it to actually look for candidates. So we just had an event. Employer partners went in, looked you up for their roles, and we had 5 spouses who hired from this event. Altis uses this, I know, and all of our employer partner uses it. So please sign up for the network. If you would like more information, you will have the Military Spousal Employment Network email address to reach out to us. I just want to go into the job board to show you that Sarah and Nicole spoke about all of the roles they have. And as you could see, they spoke about all of the remote roles they have, on-site and hybrid. Just wanted to pop this in here to share with you. You could also see right now we have over 5,000 jobs. Just wanted to pull out Altis. So you have a range of roles that you could apply for. With that, I will turn it back over to Sarah and Nicole and the team at MFS to answer any and all questions you may have.